Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Wisdom Wednesday today. And we kind of want to take a different route in how we did our live today. And we want to speak from just things that are going on in the world and how it's affecting us from a spiritual and mental aspect, because these are daily things that we as individuals and people who just have to live in this world are dealing with. So we want to talk about the Sonya Massey case coming out of Illinois. She was shot and killed by the police in her home. A 36-year-old black woman, and she was the one that actually called the police. And so we've seen these cases come across, lots throughout the last, 5 to 10 years. We saw all the different movements going on to be able to hold police officers accountable. But as therapists, we looked a little bit deeper in just the spiritual and mental aspect that has on the Black community at large, what it looks like from even just the police officer standpoint, what it looks like on mental health inside a police department, and how do they handle mental health crises when they're going to these calls? Are they trained for any of those things? So we really just want to really dig deep on a different perspective of what mental health look like. So for those of you who've been following the case, earlier this month, Miss Macy called the police. She thought it potentially may be an intruder in the area. Two police officers came, asking her questions and such. And I guess at the time she had a pot of water on. One of the police officers asked her to take the pot of water off. There was some exchange between the two as far as words. She said something along the line, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." He apparently didn't like that. He asked her again. He did said some obscenities to her. She immediately apologized and retreated to some area in her kitchen, where he then shot her 3 to 4 times, and it obviously caused her death. So there's so much to take in that situation. Obviously, body cam footage all shows it, so it's all online. So whatever little parts or areas that I may have been missing, please go look at the full article or the full video on your own to get every single detail. But that I just wanted to kind of give a brief overview of that whole situation. So as me and my team were looking into this, we got to really thinking deeper, like, the spiritual aspect of this, mental health, the mental health of not only the individuals that police officers serve, obviously the vast community, but police officers' own mental health. Um, and how important it is, and how we don't really talk about that perspective of that. Now, we don't know if, Sonya was suffering from anything, she was diagnosed for anything, but we know that people go undiagnosed and suffer in this world every single day. As
Mhm.
therapists, as people are walking around here clinically depressed, ain't never went to a therapist, has never seen a psychiatrist, has never been medicated. But just from having a conversation with them, we know that they're struggling with some things, and they're likely that having to understand that perspective when you're dealing with the public, especially when they're calling for your help, is imperative. And um, police officers generally aren't necessarily trained on that continually. Um, when we talk about your own mental health, police officers are human just like us. They encounter things just like us. The trauma of seeing other people's trauma unfold. And I can imagine what it feels like. It looks like not only taking someone's life, or even if you're the police officer that was with him, that was there to see someone's life be taken, that could potentially be a very traumatic situation. How does that take on your mental health? How are you to continue with the public and you're not adequately taking care of yourselves? Um, and my dad's a retired police officer. He was on the force for 20 years and retired after 20 years. And I know each department is different. Each county is different. Each state is different. So the requirements that are required for that are going to be different. For the particular department he was on, he said that they only got mental health assessments when they first got on the force, and when they were involved in a police involved shooting. So if they were on duty and shot someone, whether that person died or not, they were required to get mental health assessment after that. But if you're on a course of 20 or 30 years, you see all kinds of stuff. If you don't actually shoot someone or shoot or kill someone, you never get mental health assistance. So in his particular case, he was on the force of 20 years. He was never involved in a police involved shooting. He never killed anyone. No one shot at him. He didn't shoot at anyone. So in the 20 years of all the things that he's seen, he never got any mental health evaluation or just had the ability to talk through some of those things that he's seen that were required by the force. Other than the initial assessment he got 20 years ago when he got on the force. And although you don't necessarily shoot anyone, there is so much trauma you can see dealing with the general public in the capacity that they do. And so we really want to bring awareness to that. Ladies, please chime in.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just to piggyback off just the ending portion of what you were saying about the mental health assessments. I mean, also understanding that police officers aren't exempt from going through life just like anybody else in general. So why should it take, something to happen while they're on force just to be assessed? I mean, people go through divorces all the time. That's a part of grief. People lose people, family members, loved ones, whatever, kids, whatever it may be. There's a variety of things that can still be traumatic, that should still cause for some type of evaluation to transpire. How are we going to expect for these people to truly take care of the general public if we don't even really know if they're taking care of themselves? And so you put so people put so much on them to serve and protect, but that even starts with them actually serving themselves and protecting themselves, even understanding like, hey, I may not need to come in today, or I may need to go get X, Y, and Z, and not being looked at as you can't serve well, you can't serve on the force because there's something that you're dealing with, whether it's just something as simple as depression and anxiety. So I feel like the stigma of mental health in general and just what people, feel like that should look like or be like, most people don't want to chime in or share, like, hey, I don't want to be open to say like, hey, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z, because then they're going to send me here and then now they're going to take me and now I got to sit behind a desk. But at the end of the day, that may be the safest place for you to be until you get some type of stability. And so I just feel like just making it not this stigma of you're crazy, because that's literally the definition of what mental health has supposed to be like since we've known it, from movies in the 70s. If you are crazy, we're sending you to the loony bin, and it's just that, simple, cut and dry, and it's nothing more to it. You can't do nothing, you can't be nothing, you just crazy. And the reality of it is that it has nothing to do with just being crazy. It has everything to do with, I need a balanced life. How can I get balanced in my mental health?
That's good. Just to share, before I became a therapist, I was a child welfare specialist. I investigated the abuse and neglect of children. And we would call our high priority cases P1, meaning 90% of the time you were going to have to call a police officer. In the 4 years that I served as a social worker, with all the training that we had, social workers, we don't have a gun. When we go into people's homes by ourselves, we don't have guns. We have no way of protecting ourselves. A lot of our on the job training and being aware of people's mental health and social health, it was pertinent for us. So I think about this in terms of police officers and utilizing of a weapon. um, I was walking into homes. I've had parents swing on me. Well, one time, y'all. It was only one time that happened. And police officers had to hold me back on that one. But that one time it did happen. But in most times, I knew I was going into probably dangerous situations. I mean, when you go into a person's home and you're talking to them about possibility of taking their children, people gonna react, and not in a way that is going to be safe for you. So you had to have people skills. And I think this is what police officers and, as a world, we need to understand. Um, People are quote unquote helping and serving communities where they don't have the heart for those people. And when you going into helping fields and helping situations, There can be no room for hate in your heart for particular people or persons. You
Yeah.
have to have people skills, and you have to be trained on how to deal with people's mental health. Um, it's far too often, and it's sad with the Black community. I've witnessed it myself. When you call on the police officers or people in higher positions to help you, you turn into the person, you turn into the problem. And as Black people, that's a narrative that we have been speaking about since slavery. Where do we get help from if we can't trust the people that are put in place to help us help? We turn into victims.
Absolutely. Um, I think often not too. That's the narrative. Obviously, we're none of us are police officers, but it makes me question the narratives that are being taught in academies when it pertains to race, when it pertains to neighborhoods that may necessarily be could potentially be more dangerous, and the people who live in those neighborhoods. It can be a lot of stereotypes and things and such. And so those all those things contribute to, I feel like, how law enforcement go into these situations. I often have seen videos over social media about community policing. And it's basically police officers going there with an open mind and trying to help solve the problems and not coming there to create an issue or problem. I find that those police officers that go there with an helping hand and not just solely to try to attempt to, make escalate things essentially.
Hmm.
um, you can you That's how you develop trust. The general public, particularly people of color, have lost trust in police officers, and there's so many things that can contribute to that. But that affects your mental health. If I'm a Black woman and I know I need to call the police, that could potentially give you anxious feelings, give you anxiety. It could delay you calling them, which could potentially put you in a more dangerous situation. All of these things occur, which obviously, what again affects your mental health. Occur because there is a lack of safety in knowing that as people of color, as particularly African Americans, going having to deal with police interaction. I mean, it's just like when you get pulled over, that anxiety comes. People, African Americans got pulled over and got shot in their cars illegally. No reason for them to have been shot. No real reason for them to have been shot by the police and have been. So this all affects your mental health, but it also affects how you deal with and interact with the police and that level of trust. Funny thing I used to always say to people, because everybody knew my dad was a police officer, and I used to always tell them, I don't trust the police, I trust my dad. They was like, well, your dad's the police. Yeah, but I know my daddy. I don't
Right.
trust the police. And I even told my daddy that I don't trust the police, but I trust my father. Totally different thing because I know him. I don't know the people I'm gonna encounter in the police department. You don't know which one you don't know who you're gonna encounter. When you call 911 or you're getting pulled over, you don't know who you're going to encounter. You don't know what they're dealing with. You don't know what type of day they've had. You don't know the call they had that was before you. You don't know what happened this morning with him and his wife or her and her husband. You don't know any of these things. Your expectation, your best expectation is that they're going to do their job and do it correctly. And as we see in everyday life, that is not always the case. So that affects your mental health as a general public and citizen. And so we have to really address these things and be open to address them. And I even think about considering, local government and things of that such, or just really talking to the heads of these departments, like, hey, this is a real thing. Yeah, this may not happen particularly with your department, but it has the potentiality to, because of what we're seeing is the trend going around. And be open about that. And that's tough for African Americans because we typically get shut down. But as we're seeing that our voice can be very powerful. And the Bible tells us that we need to use our voice and that we should not be silenced. Um, and so being able to adequately use your voice, be open about it, and the things and the stigmas that are going on in our communities are important because this affects your mental and spiritual um, spiritual well-being. If I'm a new believer and seeing the things and the atrocities going on in the world and not really knowing how God can fix this or my mind frame, in the body count footage, they said she said something along, "I rebuke the name of Jesus," and it could be so many meanings behind that because those simple words. We don't know what her spiritual life was like. We don't know what her prayer life was like. We don't know what she was dealing with on the inside. We don't know any of those things because we don't know her.
Yeah.
But if I'm a new believer and hearing that, and this woman still died,
Yeah.
that could potentially shake my faith. Like she yelled out for the name of Jesus, and he didn't save her, not knowing all the other spiritual aspects of who God is, and not knowing what her spiritual life was like. We have to understand the impact that the enemy has on the world at large, and that he can literally use anybody. Just like God can use anybody, and he can call anybody, and he can make anybody be the head of anything that he chooses to be, the enemy can use anybody to do his deeds. And so as believers, we need to be aware that even when the enemy tries to make us and shake our faith. And so I think this story intertwine it if you look at it from a deeper perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. I most definitely agree with you, Darnisha, especially on the spiritual understanding and just some revelation that was given to me behind the context of understanding what transpired, because the enemy not only took out one person, he took out two. And so even in understanding that piece of it is that we still can't continue to give him credit for the things that is transpiring in the world. We're so quick to be like, oh, look, the enemy got victory, or the enemy won, or the enemy this and that, or whatever. But really looking at it from a standpoint, okay, well, then now how can we combat it? You
Yeah.
know, what can we do to take a stance as believers in these cases? Of course, we know we can pray. That's one way, to deal with it. But then what now do we display in the natural to do some work behind it? How do we now create and bring the mental health awareness into the police force? How do we now create those boundaries of when you're seeing these things play out, on a body cam? How do we now, have people that are just still, because for me, I feel like just looking at the body cam footage and just seeing that the other guy literally was able to take a stance and still didn't stand up for what was right.
Yep. Yeah.
And so it's just like, okay, the enemy literally was allowed to just have his way in that particular situation. But it's just like, okay, you had your way. You pretty much have shaken the faith of people. But at the end of the day, what are we going to truly trust and believe about the God that we serve? Are we going to believe that he's just going to allow this situation to just go and, be swept under the rug just like so many others? I feel like enough is enough. He put us in the earth to subdue and have dominion. It's time for the people that are truly equipped in the body to rise up and stop being scared. And it's time for people to get out of positions that are in the positions of leadership and they're afraid to do anything about it. The people that are in these positions, you think about mega churches and all these things, you got all of these resources within your congregation, but yet and still, we still are seeing the same things unfold from hundreds of thousands of years, thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, why are we in this continuous repetitive circle of dealing with racism? It's because nobody's really willing to deal with the aftermath. Nobody's really willing to step in and make the change. The NAACP, as far as we know how they were going in and doing all the things, but those people are old.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's time for somebody else to step into those positions and start going to make some noise and do something instead of everybody continuing to hide behind videos.
Yep. Make a post. That's it.
Make a post. That's all people are doing. And it's just like there's people that have power, but yet and still because they want to be perceived a certain way, they won't take the stance that need to be taken at this time. So I'm just going to encourage whomever decides, so whomever gets to listen to this, if you are a leader and you are in position to make a difference, it's time for you to stand up.
Make a
Mhm.
yeah.
Make a difference.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say from the spiritual aspect, hate begets hate. I was talking to the team about this over the weekend and even my son, and just racism is a title, but the root of it is hate. And you can hate a person that you've never came across. We know that there are prejudices, there are biases that we have, that people have, that they hold on to because of experiences of what they have been taught. And
Mhm.
so, in order to really deal with racism, first, we have to be truthful. It does exist, and
Yeah.
it has always existed. And then
Mhm.
also, on top of that, really dealing with the root cause, which is hate. How can you hate? Even in the Bible, God asks us to forgive our enemies, right? But your enemy has to do something to you. But then for you to hate somebody that you don't even know, that's never done to you, that's a whole higher level of hate, of evilness, that needs to be discussed. Hate is a hard thing.
Mhm.
And the heart is the thing that really needs to be healed and worked on with people. We are all human beings. And that's true what you were saying, Darnisha. The fact that I have black sons, I have dealt with racism on a whole higher level, a lot of things. And it's saddening, like what you said. We're talking about the aftermath, but this is something that is continuing and it affects our culture. So the fact that this has to be a topic, or it's literally every other month, it's another black man or a black woman crossing the stages of the internet whose lives have been lost due to racism, to hate. In that thing, I wanted to read a part of the article um, when I read this, because I was just kind of just shaking my head on it. Let me bring it up. But I was reading it just about how careless and cowardless that he was. What it says is, from looking at the body cam footage, it's clear that the space is not a space of distress in the sense that it's somebody's home. The pace and everything about the video that I saw did not seem that the police officers were under distress either, says Christian Smith, a professional of anthropology and African American studies at Yale, whose research focused on gender, anti-Black state violence. It just seems to me that the threat that was perceived was simply the threat of being a Black woman, not anything else. And that's something that we really need to think about. That's not something that we just need to think about. We really have to talk about this. Um, Black people are perceived as a threat, whether we are a threat or not. Walking down the street, going to the store with your hands up, they say you do everything right, you follow the law, you do all these things, and we still are villainized. So for a Black woman, a Black man, this is something that needs to be discussed, and they wonder why we don't respect the state, the criminal justice system, police officers. It's because you can live in a state of fear, and as a culture, we have been experiencing this since slavery, and that's what needs to break.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely. When I was reading one of the articles about it, a family member of Miss Macy said the more things change, the more things remain the same. That
Right.
was his statement, and unfortunately, that's true in a lot of areas um, that we're facing here. And these things have been going on. The difference is that it is heightened with social media and the intensity of having cameras on our cell phones and people filming everything. And like Tatiana said, not really stepping in, you're just filming. Um, to be able to have the capacity to potentially stop something. No, people just stop and just film it. um, because we grew up in a generation who didn't have cell phones with cameras and all of that. The audacity of filming something and not actually helping just is mind boggling to me, quite frankly. But I find that there is a double edged sword to that. I mean, because obviously we've been able to film things and people have clearly been in the wrong. But a part of my mind is like, well, had we actually came together, you had 30 and had those 30 people actually stop the incident, maybe that person will be able to still to be alive to talk about that incident, to be able to recover from that incident. So I think culturally, as humans and as the world we're currently living in, we need to take account of that. But also, we need to take account of, like you said, recognizing that there's a big issue that we have not solved. It has not really got as good as we would like. Some of the things that have been put in place by those before us are literally trying to be stripped
Yeah.
away. We have to be honest about those and have those honest conversations. Um, the current political climate, all that plays an effect into some of the things that we see. People, of course, talk about the political thing. I always say, at the end of the day, no matter who's in power, I serve a God that can do anything. So whoever is the leader of the free world for the United States doesn't matter to me because I serve a God who's going to take care of me regardless of who's in power. That doesn't mean that I'm one to not fully participate in the system because this is a system that we currently have. It just simply means that even when it doesn't go my way, I serve a God that ensures that I'm taken care of. But we have to be open enough to have these conversations appropriately, with understanding, with listening ears, and then to make some change. At church this past Sunday, the pastor talked about you making sure that we're using our gifts. That each person, that God gives each person at least one gift. Our gift has been the ministry of mental health. That's what we do. We talk about awareness. We obviously do groups. We do individuals. Our goal is to make awareness and to help people with their mental health so that they're able to be better human beings. Whatever your gift is that God has given you, if that's the gift to be able to sit in those political rooms and be able to have those tough conversations, if it's for you to be a lawyer, if it's you to be an advocate, whatever that looks like, using that gift to further the needs of the people is important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it helps towards a larger cause of us ultimately being in a better position. I look at all the aspects and all the moving parts of this situation and all the lives that it affects. I also look at all the things that could have potentially prevented this situation. We look at part of mental health is also prevention. We want to give you the tools so it prevents you from having to have to go through certain things because you have the appropriate tools, right? So a huge part of our job is also prevention. Well, when I look at situations like this, I also look at the things that could have solved some of these problems and potentially may not happen. This particular police officer had worked for 6 different police departments in the last 4 years. Anybody in law enforcement will tell you that that is a huge red flag. That's a huge red flag. In 4 years, you work for 6 different police departments. He's not a administrative assistant. Like, you know what I'm saying? Usually people retire from these roles, or at least, you know what I'm saying? And the fact that you moved around, that's a huge red flag. So when I look at preventative measures, we have to look at those things and say, hey, as a police department, where did y'all fall short? You know what I'm saying?
I was kind of thinking about that as you were talking. A lot of times I use that balancing and out sheet, one of our worksheets from Glow, this current practice, new practice. And how I always explain the current practice is something you're doing or not doing in a particular area that's no longer working. And a new practice is something that you can put in its place. Now, we know that how the systems, I'm going to say the criminal justice system in general, has been working. It's not working. Particularly, it's not working for minorities and for low socioeconomic statuses. If it's not working for us, it's not doing anything for us to better our lives or support us as a culture or financially. It's been a hurt. So if we're saying this as a culture that it's not working for us, then a new practice needs to be put in place. Um, Way more cultural awareness. Even as therapists, right? Um, we have to take courses every year to be able to keep a license as far as being up to date with the changes that are going on in this world. We have to be in the know about mental health diagnoses, things that are going on within our country, other countries. We have to be aware, knowledgeable of these things. And that is not something that is done in a criminal justice system. Still has laws in place from the 1800s. Nothing about that system has changed, and we all know that that system was created as a means to keep African Americans and people with lower economic statuses down. So this is a known thing. This is not something that is hidden. So for that to be said, why is there nothing being done to correct these things and on a higher level? I have a comment, and Brittany said the narrative of Black women isn't going to change unless there's a shift in social media. According to the world, our gift is only to sexually entertain the world and provide drama, moderation to plan the field. This affects how we are treated, and I think that's true. As a people, we have to do it better, but as a world, we have to do better too. And the changes really start with us. What we can do. I just made a post about this, Joe Osteen. What we can do with our gift to make a positive impact, no matter if you're fought against that or not.
But I was gonna say too, Gail, with that being said, Black women continue to be exploited in the ways that we are, is because we continue to allow it to happen.
That's true.
And it for a little bit of fame, for a little bit of chump change. And so if we don't, as Black women, take a stance and stop putting ourselves out there to be the video vixen, to be the real housewives and all the extra drama,
Right. Nah.
if we don't take a stance to get that, and we continue to entertain it, because guess what, we're still feeding into it as a people because we're still watching it. And so the only way that people can continue to exploit us as Black women is by us continuing to allow them to. Once again, it goes back to, we have to make a change and stand up for ourselves. Guess
That's
what? I'm gonna continue to be silly and I'm gonna continue to be a fool until I'm not ready to be that anymore. And so it's really just that simple. It's a choice. People are choosing to do this because the society in the world says you haven't made it and you have not conquered anything in life and you are not successful if you haven't been on a stripper pole, turned into a rapper, and all these different things. If you're not a basketball wife, if you're not a football wife, if you're not this or if you're not that, the world has already stereotyped the Black woman of what she should be. And also understanding too, if we're supposed to be one of the largest educated populations, then it's time for us to start linking together, networking together to make a difference for our people. We're gonna always, it just continues to, every time I feel like when it comes to us, it just shows me that picture of literally the world on our backs, and all we have to do is literally stand up together. When are we going to really come together as a people? You have all these cultures that are coming together. You see everybody from a family. You got a generation that started 18 in the 1800s, and that entire family lineage is wealthy. Why? Because they already started it. Somebody has to start doing something different. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to be the cycles of what we're seeing in the world. And obviously, we know the world is getting worse. But until we as a people stand up together and take a stance for one another, instead of saying, oh, if he make it, then I'm going to go rob and steal from him. Then how does that help us? Or whatever, instead of saying, hey, how did you really get to this position? And guess what? Some people get to those positions and they don't want to reach back and they don't want to help you to get there. But my thing is that if I truly trust in my Father in heaven and the gift that I have, then, and He is the one that brought me to this, I don't care about telling you what worked for me because I know I'm still going to be able to get what I need from my Father. And so what I feel like happens in our society is that one makes it, they don't reach back, and then you have this cycle of, this is why you see so many people that are just football stars, basketball stars, so everybody's now chasing the same dream. Like being African American, you can't go now be a business person. Being an African American, you can now go be have your own practices, whether it's being a doctor or dentist, so on and so forth. We got to do something different, though. We got to think different.
Come on.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I've always said that. I said we no longer in the position to where we solely play the blame game. I said we have to take accountability for the lack thereof that we contribute in this process.
Yeah.
Um, and what could do better. And actually, to be quite honest, that actually just starts with our own lives. People like, oh, I can't change my community. Okay, you might not be able to go in there and change the community, but you can change how you function in your own life. You can change how the things that you're teaching your children and how you're treating your children, how you're interacting with your children, and the things that you're passing down. It starts, right there, and eventually those things lead to outside of the home. We do have to take accountability as a culture and as a people of where we lack and where we could do better, and then act upon that.
Yeah.
I think we've been in the game of you feeling like everybody owes us something. Oh, we didn't get our 50 acres and a mule. And I always tell people, if you're waiting on other people to do for you what you can do for yourself, you're gonna be waiting forever.
Right.
Yeah, we deserve it, but then I'm even gonna get it.
Right.
So what are you going to do in the midst to be able to do that? God has given us all the ability to do so. How we choose to do that is ultimately, up to us. And so there's definitely some accountability there that we have to have for ourselves in order to do better. And what we leave behind. I think people never, when we're living this life, oftentimes we don't think about what we leave behind until we're so much older, to we're at that point of where we're having to leave things behind. But the legacy you leave behind is far more than just stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's more than stuff. And when we look at that, and when we look at where our generation is currently sitting, and even just the generation before us, I have to think about, what am I leaving behind? What is the information? What is the hard work? What is all those things? What does my walk with God look like? What are all these things, the good advice, all these interactions that we're leaving behind? That the future generation has to look forward to. We have generations before us who did a lot of work, um, for us to be able to do and be able to do the things that we can currently do. And when I look at the generations, even like I said before us and where we're currently at, are we doing enough work?
Oh, that's good.
Have we actually solidified to do enough work that when the generations behind us come, they can truly benefit from the work that's already been done? I mean, that's a rhetorical question, but there is a question to ponder on.
Yep.
I like that. Let's do the work, ladies.
And so
We out here doing the work somehow.
we out here doing the work. We out here doing the work.
We are spreading it and trying our best, to do the work. But let's just imagine if everybody was doing that, we would really make leaps and bounds in this world. Seriously.
Yeah, and connections, getting with the police departments, getting with any just police officer that you know, and having these conversations are important. Because they have a different view for it. We're not putting I don't have to make those phone calls. I mean, I don't have to respond to those phone calls. They do. So knowing where their viewpoint in their head is from that is important as well. They're also humans. We have to remind people too of that, because although they lay their lives down each day, they're also human. So they're subject to the exact same mistakes we are every single day. subject to the exact same woes of life that we are every day. They're not no any different other than being put in the position to work that particular job and have to have that type of sacrifice each day. So I don't want to belittle them in that area of understanding that they are at the end of the day just humans. But with that being said, they need that additional help as well. And mental health, when it comes to the people that serve the general public and are there to serve us as a society, like police officers, like veterans and things and such, mental health needs to be more of a thing that we put in place while they're in their job, while they're doing their duties, and not an aftermath after something has happened or after they left the force or left the army or whatever, and now having to deal with all that stuff that they never dealt with while they were actually doing their job.
Yeah.
They can be a lot more effective in the job if they're able to deal with some of those things as they're in their duties. Um, in hopes that we not only give them education about stereotypes, biases, prejudice, history, what it looks like from the from the eyes of people who are in the Black community,
Yeah.
and all those things and such, and how we can better do with those relationships. And so this is not just one police department; these are the police departments throughout the entire country, having these conversations. So, if your police department in here have never really had the issue with that, great. That doesn't mean that they can't benefit.
God just gave me a thought as you were sitting here. Um, do you know how many races, cultures, different religious beliefs that we serve as therapists, and we're able to serve them and serve them well? So, because we get training, we get an understanding, we build relationships, we discuss things one on one, we treat people like they're human. What if police officers actually just did that? You know, um, we serve mental health. People coming here with all type of diagnoses, um, paranoia. We might be a threat to them just in talking to them sometimes. But guess what? We serve them, and I haven't heard too many therapists have shot a client, or anything. This is being honest. We
Mm-hmm.
deal with the same people that police officers deal with. So you look at it. What is the real difference? They have a gun
That's it.
and they use it how they see fit. Because I counsel and we counsel people from all different types of races, genders, cultures, social economic statuses, all those things. And we build rapport. So the same could be done with the police officers if they would like that. But we do as a people have to make a lot of noise, speak up until our voice is heard on this. I'm just tired of our people not just even being killed, wrongfully accused, being locked up, all of these things, because it's like, oh, well, it ain't me. But what happens when it is you?
Yep.
Or your son, or your daughter, or your wife, or your cousin, or your mother, or your father. Then all of a sudden, people want to say, "Oh, like, okay, it's hit."
I can't.
I don't want it to hit close to home. I want to be able to deal with it, even when it's the stranger I don't know. Because I mean, she isn't very much older. She wasn't. She's younger than me, but she was only a few years younger than me. That could be me. I mean, she's only 4 years younger than I was, that I currently am.
Call the police because I had a bad day and be the next victim.
Exactly.
And that's
We
bad
should.
too.
Yeah.
I would hate to have an issue with someone else, and because I was perceived as a threat, I was killed.
Yeah. So, the takeaways from this today, ladies, I just want people to know that, hey, mental health is important. And that's from every aspect. Whatever position or job that you have doesn't change that. We're living in a world where we have to be aware. Awareness and observation is so important now. But we have to stay spiritually intact too. In the event I ever do need to call on the police, I want to be able to do that and not feel like my life is in danger because I've done that. And that's the mind frame of a lot of Black people. So being able to access mental health is important for anybody who works in law enforcement or who is in the armed services, things of that such. Please reach out to get mental health. And if your specific area that you're at is not where you need to go, seek it out on your own. Um, because it's important. Your life matters, and the lives that you could potentially affect matter.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, ladies, before we get off today that you want to add?
No, great topic.
Yes, yes. So we thank you for tuning in to Glow Stars. We like being able to talk about these things that are going on in the world and are dealing with on a daily basis. Join us next week. We'll be back on Monday for our Mental Health Mondays. You can reach us on Glow Stars Counseling and Coaching right here on Facebook. We also have a TikTok page. You can reach us via email as well. So thank you for joining us today.